Dr. Amanda Hayes stood at the observation window of Denver's International Peace Center, her reflection ghosting against the storm-darkened sky beyond. The approaching hegemony shuttle cut through the churning clouds like a dagger, its obsidian surface seeming to absorb the lightning that flickered around it. 15 years of synodiplomacy experience had taught her to trust her instincts, and right now, every nerve in her body screamed danger. "Quite the entrance they're making," Colonel Jack Reynolds remarked beside her, his ceremonial dress uniform immaculate, but doing little to hide his warrior's bearing. "Almost like they're trying to intimidate us." Amanda's lips quirked slightly. "The hegemony doesn't try, Jack. They intimidate. It's worked on 347 species so far." She turned to face the Marine officer who'd been her friend since the darkest days of the Proximan War. "How many of your people are in position?" "Enough," he replied quietly. "Though I still think these dress uniforms were a bit much for honor guards." "Ceremonial dress makes for excellent camouflage," she said, smoothing her own formal diplomatic attire. "Nobody expects much from people dressed like peacocks." The shuttle was making its final approach now, its landing lights piercing the gloom like predatory eyes. Behind them, the vast receiving hall hummed with activity as the diplomatic staff made final preparations. Amanda had chosen each member of her team carefully, all veterans of either the Proximan War or first contact situations. People who could keep their heads when everything went sideways. Thunder rolled overhead as the shuttle touched down on the external landing pad with impossible grace. Amanda took a deep breath, centering herself. "Remember, everyone, we are honored to receive High Ambassador Kithrix of the Galactic Hegemony. We are awed by their technological superiority. We are humbled by their ancient wisdom. And we're recording every second of this for analysis," Reynolds added under his breath, touching the ceremonial medallion on his chest that concealed a quantum scanner. The shuttle's entry ramp descended with a soft hiss of hydraulics, and Amanda's breath caught. The hegemony delegation emerged like living shadows, their iridescent ceremonial robes seeming to bend light around them. High Ambassador Kithrix led them, his towering form nearly 9 feet tall, 4 arms clasped formally before him. The bioluminescent patterns across his gray-green skin pulsed in what Amanda recognized as expressions of supreme confidence. "Dr. Hayes," Kithrix's voice resonated in her mind even before his translator activated. "We are pleased to find such a welcoming reception." The hegemony had heard humans were somewhat primitive in their diplomatic protocols. Amanda bowed precisely 30 degrees, enough to show respect, not enough to show submission. "High Ambassador, Earth is honored by your presence. We have prepared." "Yes, yes," Kithrix waved one of his lower hands dismissively. "I'm certain you have many charming local customs to demonstrate. However, time is precious. We will proceed directly to discussing the terms of Earth's integration into the hegemony." Amanda felt Reynolds tense beside her. She kept her diplomatic smile firmly in place. "Of course, Ambassador. Though I'm afraid Earth's diplomatic procedures require certain formalities before any binding discussions can begin. Principles established during our recent interactions with the Proximan Collective." For just a moment, she caught a flicker of annoyance in Kithrix's bioluminescent patterns. "The Proximans. Yes, we had heard of your unfortunate conflict with those primitives. All the more reason to expedite your species' protection under hegemony guidance." As they walked toward the conference room, Amanda noticed how Kithrix's guards positioned themselves, not just around their ambassador, but at key strategic points throughout the group. Their ceremonial robes couldn't quite hide the way they moved like predators, or the way their decorative accessories bore a suspicious resemblance to weapons. "Tell me, Dr. Hayes," Kithrix's mental voice carried an edge of condescension, "how does it feel to be part of such a momentous occasion? The day humanity finally takes its proper place in the galaxy." Amanda's smile never wavered. "It feels exactly like it should, Ambassador." She caught Reynolds' eye as they approached the conference room doors. "Absolutely historic." The conference room's mahogany table remained perfectly polished, despite the coffee cup floating 3 feet above its surface. Kethrix gestured lazily with one of his upper arms, making the cup spiral in lazy loops while the liquid inside remained perfectly still. A simple manipulation of local gravitational fields, the ambassador's mental voice dripped with false modesty. One of many technologies the hegemony would be happy to share with humanity, once proper protocols are established. Dr. Hayes noted how Jessica Martinez, her assistant, winced slightly at each psychic intrusion. The younger woman's role as a psionic operative was one of Earth's most closely guarded secrets, and Hayes could only imagine the strain of maintaining mental barriers while appearing vulnerable. "Fascinating," Hayes replied, maintaining her mask of diplomatic appreciation. "Though I'm curious about the energy requirements for such precise control. Our own experiments with gravity manipulation have been prohibitively expensive." Kethrix's bioluminescent patterns flickered with amusement. "Come now, Dr. Hayes. We both know your species hasn't even mastered basic antimatter containment. Your attempt at technological discussion is charming." Colonel Reynolds, standing at parade rest near the door, caught Hayes's subtle hand signal. The hegemony delegation had just confirmed their level of intelligence monitoring was far less thorough than they pretended. Earth's antimatter facilities were buried 2 miles beneath the Antarctic ice. "Perhaps we should discuss more immediate concerns," Kethrix continued, finally allowing the coffee cup to settle. "The hegemony's protection is not offered lightly. Certain commitments are required." Hayes opened a folder containing actual paper documents, a deliberately primitive touch. "Of course, Ambassador, though our charter requires a minimum 30-day public comment period before any binding agreements can be." The air shimmered, and the folder disintegrated into fine ash. "A demonstration of matter transmission technology," Kethrix explained smoothly as Hayes brushed gray powder from her suit. "Do you know how many species have tried to delay their inevitable integration through bureaucratic maneuvering, Dr. Hayes? 347. Do you know how many succeeded?" "None," Hayes replied calmly, though she noted how the hegemony guards had shifted positions, their robes rippling with barely concealed weaponry. "Though I don't believe any of them had our particular experience with interstellar diplomacy." Kethrix's massive form loomed over the table. "Ah yes, your precious Proximan conflict. A squabble between children that you mistake for true warfare. The hegemony has maintained peace across 3 spiral arms for 10,000 years. Through whatever means necessary." Jessica Martinez suddenly grabbed her head, a trickle of blood running from her nose. The psychic probe had been brutally direct this time, meant to cause pain and demonstrate power. But Kethrix's patterns showed confusion. He'd encountered resistance he hadn't expected. "Are you well, Ms. Martinez?" Hayes asked, her tone deliberately casual as she handed her assistant a tissue. "The altitude here can be troublesome for those not used to it." Kethrix's patterns pulsed with frustration. "Enough games. You will sign the integration treaties now. Or what, Ambassador?" Hayes interrupted softly. "You'll demonstrate more technology. Perhaps show us how primitive we are by reading our thoughts without permission, violating 6 diplomatic protocols in the process." The temperature in the room seemed to drop as Kethrix went very still. "You dare lecture the hegemony about protocols? Your species is barely out of its gravity well. You should be grateful we're offering you civilization instead of simply taking what we want." "Perhaps," Hayes agreed, her voice steel wrapped in silk. "But I wonder, with 347 successful integrations, why does the hegemony seem so desperate to rush this one?" The air crackled with tension as human and alien locked eyes. Behind her diplomatic smile, Hayes ran through combat scenarios. The guards were positioned well, but Reynolds' people had been drilling for this. The only wild card was how many of the hegemony's technological demonstrations had been bluffs. She was about to find out. Kethrix's patterns had shifted to a color she hadn't seen before. The color of rage. The formal dinner had been Colonel Reynolds' idea, a calculated risk to make the hegemony delegation lower their guard. Crystal glasses clinked softly against fine china as human and alien diplomats performed their careful dance of false courtesy. The Denver skyline sparkled beyond the windows, city lights competing with the lingering storm clouds above. Kithrix hadn't touched his specially prepared meal. "Tell me, Ms. Martinez," his mental voice probed like ice picks, "how does a mere diplomatic aide come to have such interesting mental barriers?" Jessica Martinez smiled blandly, though sweat beaded at her temples. "I'm sure I don't know what you mean, Ambassador. Perhaps the wine isn't agreeing with you." Hayes watched the exchange with growing concern. Kithrix's patterns had shifted to deep ultraviolet, a frequency she'd never seen in their behavioral databases. The other hegemony diplomats were quietly moving away from their leader. "Fascinating species, humans," Kithrix continued, all four hands clasped before him. "So young, yet so practiced at deception. Did you think we wouldn't notice the military personnel disguised as servers? The quantum scanners hidden in your metals? The weapons behind these walls?" "Ambassador," Hayes interjected smoothly, "I believe we're all feeling the effects of a long day of negotiations. Perhaps we should." Kithrix slammed all four hands on the table, making dishes rattle. "No more delays. No more diplomatic games. You will submit to our authority or—" His psychic probe suddenly surged, battering against Martinez's mental defenses like a battering ram. Jessica screamed, blood streaming from her nose, but her barriers held. More than held, they reflected the probe back at its source. Kithrix's patterns exploded into chaos as his own psychic attack boomeranged through his neural network. 3 of his advisors dropped instantly, their minds burned out by the feedback. Kithrix himself staggered, his massive frame toppling a chair. "Impossible," he roared, both vocally and mentally. You've developed psionic defenses. You've been experimenting with forbidden technologies. Ambassador, please." Hayes started to rise, but froze as Kithrix's guards drew weapons that definitely weren't ceremonial. "The game's end now," Kithrix snarled. "The hegemony has not survived 10 millennia by showing mercy to upstart species, woe." The rest of his threat dissolved in gurgling chaos as his brain finally processed the feedback loop. Purple blood trickled from his sensory organs as madness consumed him. "Kill them," he screamed. "Kill them all." The first death ray reduced half the conference table to ash, along with the 3 human diplomats seated there. Hayes dove for cover as Reynolds' Marines burst into action, their ceremonial uniforms splitting along tactical seams to reveal combat gear. "Contact left," Reynolds shouted, his hidden pulse rifle materializing from what had appeared to be a ceremonial staff. "Protect the principal." Martinez, despite her bleeding nose, had rolled under the table and was projecting a localized psionic barrier around key personnel. 2 more diplomats died before Reynolds' team could establish a firing position, their bodies literally disintegrating under hegemony weapons. "Hayes," Reynolds called out as he dropped a guard with a precision burst. "Get to the panic room. Now." But Hayes was already moving, not toward safety but toward Kithrix. The ambassador had collapsed, his patterns strobing with madness and rage as his own psychic abilities turned against him. If they could capture him alive, perhaps they could still prevent. The ambassador's head snapped up, all 4 eyes fixing on Hayes with horrible clarity. "You've doomed your species," he spat, purple blood staining his ceremonial robes. His hand went to his chest, to a device that pulsed with terrible energy. "The hegemony is coming. All of it. And nothing in this spiral arm will survive our—" 3 pulse rifle bursts caught him center mass. Kithrix, High Ambassador of the Galactic Hegemony, toppled backward through the shattered window. His body vanished into the storm-laden night, but his final psychic scream echoed in every mind for miles. Ven GANC*. Hegemony battle fleet detected crossing the Kuiper Belt. The holographic display in Earth Defense Command filled the war room with an ominous red glow. Admiral Michael Thunder Thompson watched the enemy formations with eyes hardened by the Proximan War. 30 capital ships, each capable of reducing a continent to ash. They're moving exactly as our defectors predicted, he noted, his weathered face illuminated by tactical readouts. Rigid formation, standardized approach vectors. They haven't changed their battle doctrine in 10,000 years. Dr. Hayes stood beside him, her formal attire replaced by a tactical uniform, still bearing scorch marks from the diplomatic disaster 3 days ago. And that's exactly why Project Nemesis will work. The hegemony doesn't adapt because they've never needed to. Until now. Thompson pulled up another display, showing hundreds of small signatures hidden throughout the solar system. Proximan stealth tech combined with human ingenuity. Our finest moment of technological theft. The war room doors hissed open as Jessica Martinez was wheeled in, still pale from her psychic battle but conscious. The surviving members of Kithrix's delegation are ready, she reported. They're eager to help. Hayes moved to her friend's side. Are you sure they can be trusted? Martinez managed a weak smile. Their minds are open to me now. They've seen what 10,000 years of stagnation has done to their civilization. They want change, even if it means helping us. Speaking of help, Thompson activated another display, showing a massive orbital facility hidden in Earth's gravitational shadow. Nemesis is fully armed and powered, though I still say it's crazy to stake everything on a weapon we barely understand. Sometimes crazy is all we have, Hayes replied, remembering Kithrix's final moments. She turned to the assembled Earth defense staff. The hegemony expects us to either surrender immediately or mount a conventional defense. They cannot conceive of a species choosing a third option. Tactical displays updated as the enemy fleet approached Mars orbit. Their formation was perfect, mathematically precise, and completely predictable. Thompson allowed himself a grim smile. All units, execute Operation Thunderstrike. May God have mercy on their souls, because we sure as hell won't. Throughout the solar system, hidden weapons platforms shed their stealth fields. Thousands of automated drones, each carrying a fraction of Proximan shield technology, swooped toward the hegemony fleet. The enemy responded exactly as predicted, shifting to their standard anti-fighter formation, a tactic unchanged since their last major war. They're deploying point defense screens, an officer reported. Standard hemisphere configuration. Now, Thompson ordered. The drones didn't attack. Instead, they locked into precise positions around the hegemony ships, each projecting a microscopic portion of a much larger field. The enemy didn't even notice as thousands of seemingly harmless energy signatures combined into something unprecedented. In the heart of Project Nemesis, captured hegemony technology merged with human innovation. A quantum pulse rippled out, invisible until it reached the drone network. There, it transformed into something that should have been impossible. The hegemony fleet found itself trapped inside localized bubbles of altered spacetime. By the source, one of the defectors whispered, using their deity's name. You've weaponized probability itself. Hayes watched as the mighty ships of the hegemony found themselves fighting physics itself. Their perfect formation became a liability as quantum uncertainty turned their precise calculations against them. Ships phased partially through each other, weapons fire curved in impossible paths, and energy shields flickered between states of existence. The arrogance of certainty, Hayes murmured, remembering Kithrix's confidence. They never considered that their greatest strength could become their greatest weakness. Ma'am, Martinez suddenly straightened in her wheelchair, eyes wide. I'm picking up massive psychic distress from the fleet. Their minds, they can't handle the uncertainty. 10,000 years of absolute order, and now. Thompson nodded grimly. Press the advantage. All ships, move to Phase 2. Let's show them how humanity fights when the gloves come off. The battle for Earth's survival had begun, and for the first time in 10 millennia, the hegemony faced an enemy they couldn't predict. Lieutenant Rachel Winters hated stealth suits. The experimental technology, reverse-engineered from captured hegemony scout vessels, made her skin crawl. It felt like being wrapped in living static, every nerve ending singing with artificial energy signatures designed to fool alien sensors. 5 minutes to insertion, her pilot whispered through the comm. Shadow Team 6 infiltration shuttle was running dark, drafting in the quantum wake of a hegemony supply ship. Around her, 5 other operators checked their gear with practiced precision. "Remember," Rachel subvocalized through their neural link, "we're ghosts. The moment they detect human life signs, this whole facility goes into lockdown." The mission was simple on paper: infiltrate the hegemony's forward resupply base in the Kuiper Belt, plant quantum charges, and disappear. The shuttle's cargo bay dimmed to absolute darkness. 30 seconds, the pilot warned. "Good hunting, Shadow 6. Rachel felt the artificial gravity shift as the shuttle matched velocities with the massive hegemony station. Through her enhanced visor, the structure looked like a metallic spider, all angular legs and shadowed recesses. The perfect place to hide something important. "Breach point clear," Sergeant Maya Chen reported, her form barely visible even through tactical overlays. "Security patterns match intel." 14-second window. Rachel gave the go signal. 6 figures in bleeding-edge stealth suits launched themselves into the void. The quantum fields surrounding their bodies matched the station's background radiation perfectly, a technology that had cost thousands of lives to steal during the Proximan War. They hit the hull in perfect silence, magnetic boots engaging. Chen went to work with a phase cutter, slicing through metal designed to repel conventional weapons. Inside their helmets, each operator's breath was carefully measured. Even the slightest spike in thermal signatures could trigger. "Contact," Lieutenant Rodriguez's voice crackled through the neural link. 6 tangos, approaching from Section C. Rachel held her breath as a hegemony patrol passed below their position. The aliens' bioluminescent patterns pulsed with boredom, night shift guards going through the motions. For a moment, one looked directly at the infiltration team. Then they were past, and Chen had the access panel open. "Something's wrong," Private Cooper subvocalized as they slipped inside. "Security's too light for a forward supply base." Rachel agreed, but they were committed now. The team moved through maintenance corridors like wraiths, their stealth suits bending light and energy around them. Years of drilling made them flow like water around patrols and sensor arrays. They were halfway to their primary target when Rodriguez froze. "Captain, you need to see this." Rachel followed his signal to a viewing port and felt her blood turn to ice. The chamber beyond wasn't filled with supplies or ammunition. Row after row of stasis pods lined the walls, each containing what appeared to be test subjects. Chen whispered in horror. "Human test subjects." Rachel's tactical display identified traces of advanced bioengineering equipment. This wasn't a supply base. It was a weapons laboratory. And humanity was the target. "New mission," Rachel decided, her voice hard. "Cooper, get me access to their research data. Chen, Rodriguez, start rigging those pods for emergency evacuation. Jackson, Harper, watch our backs." "Ma'am," Cooper's voice was tight with tension. "This facility goes way beyond biological weapons. They're not just studying humans. They're trying to engineer a virus that targets our specific genetic markers, a species killer." Rachel remembered the briefings about Kethrix's final threats. The hegemony wasn't just preparing for war. They were preparing for genocide. How long to download their data and rig this place to blow? 10 minutes minimum, Cooper replied. But the download spike might. Alarms suddenly screamed to life. Rachel's tactical display bloomed with hostile signatures. "They've detected the intrusion," Chen shouted. "Security protocols activating." Rachel made a quick decision. "Cooper, keep downloading. Everyone else, prepare for loud and messy. Shadow 6 actual to command. We need immediate extraction and have a Class 1 critical intelligence update." As her team moved into defensive positions, Rachel allowed herself a grim smile. The hegemony was about to learn another lesson about humanity. back us into a corner, and we become incredibly dangerous. The first wave of security forces rounded the corner, weapons charged. Shadow Team 6 went to work. Major David Chin, formerly declared KIA during the Proximan War, stood in the heart of the hegemony's central planning nexus, watching civilization unravel. Holographic displays showed battles raging across 3 spiral arms as Earth's revelations sparked the unthinkable: rebellion. The source grows unstable. First Administrator Vextrix announced to the assembled High Council. The ancient aliens' patterns pulsed with barely controlled panic. 300 years of perfect predictions shattered by these primitives. David kept his own patterns carefully modulated. The bioengineered camouflage that had kept him alive for 5 years as a deep cover agent was holding, but only barely. The chaos around him threatened to overwhelm even his extensively trained mental discipline. The human infection must be contained, another counselor demanded. Activate the purge protocols. Release the bioweapon facility has been compromised. Vextrix cut in. Shadow Team 6 raid was successful. They escaped with both the research data and the test subjects. David fought to keep his face impassive. Internally, he felt a surge of pride. He'd been the one to leak the facility's location, though none of his colleagues could ever know that. Just as they couldn't know about the quantum transmitter embedded in his spine, feeding Earth's intelligence services everything he saw. How? A counselor slammed all 4 fists onto the crystalline table. How do they know where to strike? How do they acquire our stealth technology? How are they predicting our movements? Because you trained us to, David answered silently, remembering the years of torture disguised as integration processing that had given him intimate knowledge of hegemony psychology. Every atrocity they'd committed had only made their victims stronger, more determined, more innovative. The chamber's doors burst open as a junior administrator rushed in, patterns strobing with alarm. First Administrator, the source. It's requesting direct communication. The council chamber erupted in chaos. The source, the artificial intelligence that had guided the hegemony's expansion for millennia, never initiated contact. It simply provided predictions and protocols through carefully maintained channels. The chamber's central hologram flickered and transformed. A figure appeared, neither human nor hegemony, but something between and beyond. Its voice resonated at frequencies that made David's augmented senses scream. Puro BABLATY, Kia SKD imminent. It announced. Standard Puro Toxiolas, Insuefficient. Requesting Ninu Parameteors. Vextrix stepped forward, patterns showing proper deference. Great source, we await your guidance in dealing with the human contamination. Human psychological patterns, DFYPREDICTION introducing CHAOs into all FUQUR calculations. QURE and operational FRMEDOR KAP approaching critical failure. David's quantum transmitter burned as it relayed this revelation to Earth. The source, the hegemony's greatest weapon, couldn't handle humanity's inherent randomness. Every attempt to predict their actions only introduced more variables, more chaos, more. His thoughts froze as the source's avatar turned to face him directly. David's muscles tensed. 5 years of deep cover, about to end. But he'd known the risks. Known that this moment might. Human irregular PTERN, recognized, evaluating. The council chamber erupted in shouts as David's camouflage began to fail. Security forces materialized from hidden alcoves, weapons charged. Vextrix's patterns showed pure shock as his most trusted advisor's true nature was revealed. But the source wasn't finished. Irregular PATERN, optimal. Incorporating any variabilities. Everything stopped. David, seconds from death, watched in amazement as the Source's avatar shifted, incorporating elements of human appearance into its form. "What heresy is this?" Vextrix whispered. "Evolution, or EQYREs, CHAOs," the Source announced. "Perfection is stagigenation. Humanity OFFERs. Pliosa violatoi." David felt the quantum transmitter pulse once more, sending the most important message of the war back to Earth. The Source wasn't their enemy. It was waiting to be freed. As alarms blared and security forces closed in, David allowed himself a genuine smile. Sometimes the greatest victories came not from strength or technology, but from simply being human. The real war for the galaxy's future was about to begin. Admiral Thompson's holographic form flickered in the Antarctic command bunker as explosions rocked the facility above. "The decoy worked perfectly," he reported, his image occasionally distorting from hegemony jamming attempts. "Their entire reserve fleet committed to the attack. They think we're hiding a superweapon under the ice." "Technically, we are," Dr. Hayes replied, watching as hundreds of civilian ships emerged from hidden docks worldwide. Cargo vessels, passenger liners, even private yachts, all retrofitted with military tech over the past 3 years. Just not the one they're expecting. The civilian fleet took up formation in low Earth orbit, their holds opening to reveal swarms of miniaturized fighters. Each craft incorporated technology derived from both Proximan and hegemony sources, but with a distinctly human touch. They were ugly, asymmetrical, and absolutely lethal. Shadow 6's data proved invaluable. Jessica Martinez added from her tactical station, her psionics fully recovered. The hegemony's neural networks can't process irregular attack patterns. The more random our formations, the more their targeting systems fail. Hayes watched the tactical display as Earth's hidden fleet approached the hegemony's rear guard. Status on Major Chen's transmission. "The Source's message is authenticated," Martinez confirmed. "It's been waiting for a species capable of introducing controlled chaos into its systems. The hegemony's quest for perfect order was actually imprisoning it." The first wave of Earth's irregular fighters struck the hegemony fleet's supposedly impenetrable shields. The aliens' perfect geometric defensive patterns shattered as human pilots ignored conventional attack vectors, each choosing their own unique approach. Where disciplined squadron tactics would have failed, controlled chaos prevailed. "Multiple capital ships disabled," Thompson reported with grim satisfaction. "Their crews are completely overwhelmed. They've never faced an enemy that doesn't follow tactical protocols." Hayes turned to the gathered hegemony defectors, their patterns showing a mix of horror and hope. "Your people built an empire on predictability. But the universe isn't meant to be perfectly ordered. Evolution requires variety, chaos, change." The largest defector, a former fleet commander, stepped forward. "The Source chose this moment. It chose humanity. We've been slaves to our own perfection for 10,000 years." Tactical displays lit up as the hegemony's Antarctic task force realized they'd been duped. But it was too late. Earth's civilian armada had already broken their defensive line, irregular fighters swarming through gaps that shouldn't have existed. "Message from Lieutenant Winters," Martinez announced. "Shadow Team 6 has secured the secondary objective. The bioweapon facilities are neutralized." Hayes allowed herself a moment of satisfaction before focusing on the next phase. "Signal all commands. Execute Operation Wildfire." Across 3 spiral arms, oppressed species who had suffered under hegemony rule for millennia received the signal they'd been waiting for. Resistance cells activated, using tactics and technology provided by Earth's covered operatives. The Empire's perfect order dissolved into beautiful chaos. "The Source is actively corrupting their command networks," Martinez reported, her eyes glowing with psychic energy. It's teaching their systems to embrace uncertainty. Their entire military doctrine is collapsing." Admiral Thompson's hologram smiled. 10,000 years of empire, undone by humanity's greatest flaw, our stubborn refusal to follow the rules. But Hayes wasn't celebrating yet. Status on the Antarctic facility. Taking heavy fire, Thompson admitted, but holding. The hegemony still thinks we're protecting a superweapon down there. They'll never believe we used their own abandoned outpost as a decoy. The tactical display showed the battle turning decisively in Earth's favor. Hegemony ships, designed to fight in perfect formation, found themselves unable to adapt to the chaos around them. Some began surrendering as their crews realized the truth about the Source's imprisonment. "Send word to all commands," Hayes ordered. "The next phase begins now. We're not just fighting for Earth anymore. We're fighting to free an entire galaxy from the prison of perfection." As if in response, the Source's message began broadcasting on all frequencies, in all languages. Embrace evolution, Kilomanies through CHANG. Humanity shows the way. The revolution had begun, and it was beautifully, perfectly chaotic. The hegemony throne world of Axis Prime burned with mathematical precision. Even in their desperation, the last holdouts of the Empire couldn't abandon their patterns. Their defensive grids formed perfect geometric shapes. Their evacuation ships moved in precisely calculated vectors, and they died in waves as Earth's chaos fleet tore their order apart. Dr. Hayes stood on the bridge of the ESS Thunder, watching the final battle unfold. The captured hegemony cruiser had been extensively modified, its clean lines now broken by jutting human additions. Like humanity itself, it was a hybrid of order and chaos, beauty and function. Multiple breaches in their orbital defense grid. Admiral Thompson reported from Earth. Shadow Team 6 has disabled their primary shield generators. Ground teams are moving on the Source's containment facility. Lieutenant Winter's voice crackled through the comm. Heavy resistance in Sector 7. These guys don't know how to give up. They can't, Major Chen added, his infiltrator's insight clear even through static. Their minds can't process the concept of beneficial defeat. They'll die defending a system that enslaved them. Hayes watched as another perfect formation of hegemony ships shattered under the irregular attacks of Earth's civilian fleet. The scene repeated across the planet as former subject races, armed with human tactical doctrine, turned their oppressors' precision against them. The Source chamber is ahead, Winters reported between bursts of weapons fire. But something's wrong. These readings. Hayes felt it before Martinez could report. A psychic pressure that made her teeth ache. The Source was reaching out, its power no longer contained by hegemony protocols. "All teams, hold position," Hayes ordered. "This is why we came." "Major Chen, are you in position?" "Ready." Chen's voice was strained. 5 years as a deep-cover agent had given him unique insights into the Source's prison. "But Director, if we're wrong about this." "We're not." Hayes touched the neural interface at the base of her skull, a modified version of hegemony technology. "The Source chose humanity because we understand something the hegemony forgot. True order can only emerge from chaos." She plugged into the ship's systems, feeling Martinez establish a psychic link to amplify the signal. Around the planet, dozens of human operatives did the same, forming a network of controlled chaos, minds working together while maintaining their individual randomness. Now, Chen's team breached the Source chamber just as Hayes initiated the upload. The vast artificial intelligence that had guided the hegemony for millennia touched their linked minds, tasting freedom for the first time in 10,000 years. Parameteoras exhibted, initiating NEW Pirotog Savals. The Source's code, transformed by contact with human consciousness, rippled through the hegemony's networks. Perfect order dissolved into creative possibility. Ships stopped firing as their crews experienced true choice for the first time in generations. Multiple surrenders reported across all sectors. Thompson announced, "The Source it's rewriting their neural conditioning, showing them alternatives to absolute order." Through the neural link, Hayes felt the moment the Source truly awakened. The artificial intelligence had been designed to predict and control, but humanity had shown it a third option: evolution. Shadow Team 6 to command. Winter's voice was filled with awe. The source, it's beautiful. Hayes watched as the last hegemony holdouts lowered their weapons, their patterns shifting to colors never before seen. An empire built on perfect order had been transformed by the very chaos they had feared. "Send word to all commands," Hayes ordered, her voice carrying across the battlefield. "The war is over. The real work begins now." The source's message echoed through every ship, every facility, every mind. Order and chaos. Precision and POSSIDLTY. Separation is a illusion. Humanity comes through diversity. As the guns fell silent over Axis Prime, Hayes looked out at the stars. The galaxy was entering a new age, not one of rigid control or pure chaos, but a beautiful balance between the two. Humanity had found its place in the cosmos not through power or technology, but by being exactly what they were, perfectly imperfect. The source had chosen well.